Free Skaro!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 840. I am Stephen at Gallifrey One.
Erika at Gallifrey One.
And Chip at Gallifrey One.
Yay, it's our crew. It's our crew together. Because you are my spouse.
He's pointing at me.
I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is pointing at me. Ladies and gentlemen, and everybody.
Yes.
We're here to talk about Babylon 5, right?
I remember that show. I remember that. I didn't see any. You didn't bring your Sinclair costume this year.
No.
I did not.
No.
I wanted to respect the venue.
That's all right. We're here to do a wrap-up in the slightly windier climes than we did yesterday with Paul Booth on this balcony, the official COVID-safe recording balcony of Radio Free Skaro, and indeed Verity.
Yes,
because
that's next.
They're in this studio right after us, so this is your warm-up.
Yeah, I already listened to yesterday's episode of Radio Free Skaro, and it sounded great. So I feel like even with this amount of wind, I am not nervous at all.
Paul was amazed because when I told him, he asked, when's this going out? I think it'll probably be out by the time you get to the lobby.
Yes.
As you left the room, because that's how we do this.
The elevators are that slow.
Or is it I'm that quick?
You are that quick. Also, I showed up just after you were done and chatted with Paul for a little bit.
That's true.
So I slowed him down.
You did,
a
yeah.
titch, but not that much.
You delayed it a little bit. On this episode, this final episode from Radio Free Skaro.
Not the final episode from Radio Free Skaro, the final episode from
Gallifrey One, thank you.
Breaking news, everybody.
No!
Just announcing in passing. Matthew Sweet, interviewer and journalist and Doctor Who writer, Matthew Sweet, who I interviewed yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, Saturday. Yeah. On the grass in the sun at Gallifrey One, which is my new favorite place to record interviews. If the weather works out like this next year, I'm doing everything on the grass.
It was so pastoral.
It was nice. Rob Ritchie was just literally lying back, shielding his eyes from the sun with his eyes closed, answering questions about DVD animations and stuff. It was just so serene and tranquil, and it's just,
You should bring a picnic blanket next year.
That's actually a very good idea.
Yep.
All right.
We have a very nice one that folds up into a little
bring
case
a basket,
itself.
bottle of wine.
Why
cheese.
not? How has we'll start with you, Erika. How's your convention been this weekend?
It's been really good, surprisingly good. I think had it not been for your responsibilities and joyous responsibilities here at Galley, I might have wanted to talk you into not going and canceling because I have a high anxiety level, medically, and I'm really glad that I didn't do that.
Yay.
And that wasn't the case, because it has been a surprise to me how unanxious I have been while I'm here. People have been very good about masking it, sort of in the lobby as it gets later. People, when they're actively drinking, there's a lot of active drinking going on, so fewer masked people. So that's but it's very easy to leave the lobby and go outside or go to your room or something for people who are...
Or find other spots in the lobby that are further away. Yeah.
I have been just really kind of chill about the whole thing, and nobody has given anybody else stick about, not about wearing masks. There's nobody who's rolling their eyes. Okay, there's one guest, but I won't name names.
Right.
But other than that... Oh, and by the way, not a Doctor Who guest. It was just somebody who was here to sign autographs for something else.
Okay.
Just Doctor Who guests have been 100% fantastic.
Yes, work the clues out yourself there, dear listener.
And everybody here has just been kind and thoughtful and giving space to people when it's needed. And with this few people here, it's easier to give space in the hallways than most years. But yeah, it's been wonderful, and I'm just glad to see everybody so joyous about being in person again.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Chip?
It's been amazingly therapeutic.
Yeah.
I can't speak highly enough of the work of Sean Lyon and the organizers. They set the tone. They said vaccines would be required, masks would be required. They set that expectation early on. So if you were coming to Gallifrey, you knew what was expected of you, and that's been part of the deal. So, and I mentioned this on Twitter earlier today as we record this. With really good fast turnaround COVID testing truck outside, with people actively talking with each other about what they are consenting to as far as masks and things like that. I was at a panel that Lee Gao, our friend, was moderating about Marvel and DC. And Lee is a registered nurse who has been on the front lines dealing with COVID herself, literally doing life-saving work in the most stressful environment possible. And she facilitated a conversation with the other panelists about, okay, are we going to do masks on or not? Checked in with the people in the audience at the front row. The entire audience was masked. The folks on the panel decided collectively that they were going to unmask, and they did. And it just felt safe and thoughtful to see all of these conversations about consent with the understanding that everybody here is already vaccinated. I cannot remember a time at Gallifrey One where I saw so many people taking active care and consideration for each other.
Yeah. I also really liked the fact that the RFS live show on Friday, that you, and I realized this is the very first thing, so you hadn't even thought about it or talked about it, that you wore your mask all the way through. The guests did not wear masks.
Yeah.
They were quite separated from you anyway. But I felt like that was a nice way to kick off the convention, because I felt like you, Stephen, were giving permission to everyone to wear a mask in whatever circumstances they felt necessary. So, like, even in rooms and stuff, if you're in somebody's hotel room, there's no need for you to take off your mask, even if the other people are, because Stephen Shapansky up on stage there, he was wearing his mask when he was talking to the guests. So I thought that was just really, even though it wasn't planned to be a nice touch, I think it was. It ended up being that way.
I mean, I that wasn't my intention, but it's neat that you raised that, because I think I knew I wanted separation from the because basically, we were the first thing on the day, so I could sort of say, can we have the couches like about yay apart? I did want to create a visual of separation. And then I think Sylvester McCoy, who was our first guest, I think he was like, he had the full shield.
He had a face shield when he came on. But then he was wearing it backstage for all of his interviews that I saw him, and then he would take it off when he got on stage.
Yeah, and so I was like, I sort of like, and he was the only guest I saw beforehand, because everyone else sort of comes later on. And I took my cue from him a little bit. And so I just kept it on, because why not? I wasn't sure what the protocol would be. And then when I did the commentary later on that day with Matt Strevens and Sasha Dewan, they both said, are we taking these things off? And thinking, we've been all vaxxed, boosted and all that. So I just got a PCR, a clean bill from the rapid test we got like literally an hour before that. So I'll take it off too. So yeah, It felt safe.
Yeah, I mean, I have felt safe. At the same time, everybody here is learning to people again.
Yes.
Yeah.
While many of us have had to be in the office, I've been working in the office, I think I mentioned before, since March of 21. But that's different from socializing in person, and it's you're in with both feet in this environment. So people have been tapping out when they felt anxious. People who just made the decision not to come have had varying reactions to seeing the chatter about what's been happening this weekend and whether or not they want to know what's going on or want to hold it at arm's length. It's been a weekend for being kind to each other and grading each other and ourselves on a curve. Because this is socializing on hard mode. And it's going to be that way probably for some time to come. If things continue to get better, and this is hope, not an expectation, but if things get better by this time next year, things may still be very different. I expect that we'll still see some people wearing masks to protect themselves.
Yep.
And I expect that we'll still have people, reacting to the trauma of having been separated from people for a couple of years. Be kind to each other. Be kind to each other and cut each other some slack. Conventions are hard, but oh my God, it's so great to be back.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me feels bad because, we came to the convention and a lot of people didn't. And what makes me feel bad is that we probably feel comfortable with the way things are this weekend is because there are 1,800, 2,000 people. If everyone came, I'm not too sure that anyone here would feel as comfortable as we did. And I don't want to make it sound like, hey, people who didn't come this year because you weren't comfortable going, thank you for not coming because we had a good time. It's kind of like Schrodinger's galley. If you come, it won't be as, if everyone came, it won't be as comfortable. But since so many people were uncomfortable with that, it was comfortable for those that came. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
People self-selected according to their own comfort level and their own needs.
Yeah.
And the people who didn't come didn't make a wrong decision by any means. Nobody should shame them for not having come just because the ones of us who did had a good time.
Yeah, I know several people who didn't come who are even knowing how much fun we're having and how how comfortable the people who are here are. They are not second guessing that choice to stay home. That was the right thing for them, and and I absolutely understand that and salute them. Yeah,
I mean, even in the days and weeks leading up to this, I was not sleeping well, thinking just about how this is going to go. What were interviews going to be like? What was anything going to be? What was LobbyCon going to be like? And I think over the course of the weekend, I think my fears and concerns just pretty quickly allayed themselves. I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have known that on Wednesday, when we arrived here, I think once we actually got here and saw how, this will work if we all do what we're doing, it's going to be okay.
I'm not still ready to jump into a convention every weekend.
No.
And absolutely not a convention that doesn't take as much care as Galley has taken. I feel like all along the way, all of the steps that they have taken have made me feel more comfortable and safe over this. So while there are other events and things that I would like to go to in the near to not so near future, I am going to be using Galley as sort of this a tent pole. This is the thing I'm going to look back at, and be like, okay, is this other thing doing the things that Galley has done, taking the steps, being as clear, providing tests in the parking lot, that little cubicle thing out there. We needed a PCR test 72 hours before we fly back to Canada, and we were able to go out there and do it. And at the same time, they did a rapid test, which was wonderful because within, minutes, we got a text message saying, yeah, you're negative. So I felt great on the day knowing that I was negative immediately. And then several hours later, we get the results of the PCR test, which also negative. Hurrah.
Yeah.
So that we can fly back. And then we brought some rapid tests ourselves. I actually took one this morning because I have a chronic condition with the cartilage in my chest, and it often feels like I need to cough, and then every time I'm like, oh my God, is it COVID? It's not so far.
As we've all
been.
Done with everything over the past 2 years.
Exactly. And LobbyCon, whether you're wearing a mask or not, is you need to shout to be heard by the person sitting next to you.
Yeah.
That's just the way that it always works. So that's my biggest trigger. So I woke up this morning after, several nights of that going, oh no. And I took a rapid test and it was immediately negative and stayed negative the whole 15 minutes I was staring at it, and everything was fine. So I'm having a great day.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm noticing, that I'm having a raspier throat because I'm having to sort of raise my voice a little more to get through the mask to be able to be heard. And at the end of the night, I'm going, I didn't notice that my throat was raspy this morning until I got on stage and had to speak in a microphone. I go, just from yelling in the lobby last night. But
every time one of my friends mentions in the text that they did their rapid test and they're negative, it's just that extra little bit of reassurance. But I think the biggest thing that has made me comfortable with all of this has been the vaccination requirement.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's going to be my litmus test or my rapid antigen test going forward for any other convention. Are they going to require vaccination? There's a lot of political pressure on organizations and governments not to do it, but I get to choose where I get to spend my time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's intriguing. The Foo Fighters, just to steer this into a wild direction, announced a concert in Edmonton in September, and the tickets are going to go on sale. And boldly on the bottom of it says vaccination is required, like in September.
Let's go.
So it's showing that doesn't matter really what civic or municipal or government levels of mandate is required. There's still things that venues or bands or something can still insist upon these things. So I feel like Gallifrey One, having done it this year, because initially they flirted with the negative test within 72 hours, but then they changed that right to vaccine mandates. That maybe they do it again. Should we be in this situation in a year's time?
Yep.
Yeah. Chip, you had the mic. You were my sidekick on the live show, for which I
Roundels.
Thank you enough. How did you think the live show experience went for you this year?
It was fantastic. It was the best behind the scenes tech crew work that the live show has ever had.
Yeah.
The folks, there were some new folks and some new equipment. It has never looked better. It has never sounded better. Everything was working together perfectly.
Right.
And it was a lot of fun being able to banter with you in Warren and Chris's absence, to just sort of to play along a little bit, and then go back to switching the video in and out. Great experience. You made people cry.
Yes, you did. Can confirm from the middle of the audience. I was surrounded by people. Like the video, it's up on Twitter and maybe elsewhere. So if you haven't watched it yet, and if you haven't listened to the live show, you should watch the video, because there's text that slowly comes up on the screen, sentence by sentence, and the people sitting around me were like, "Oh," and then the next line, "Oh no," and then the next line, and then when the Jodie comes on and the music starts, and just everybody around me was kind of glancing at me and just being yeah, there were literal
Steven,
tears.
you monster.
Yeah, yep. I was I whispered under my breath to I think it was Katie Beth that was sitting next to me, "I married a monster."
For those that don't, it's the Jodie in the closet video in March of 2020. I had a different idea for the opening video for leading up to it, and then Omicron hit, and it kind of dashed all of that. And then I thought, wait a second, the Jodie video, let's watch that again. And the sad reality was that what she said in March of 2020 was pretty much pertinent, word for word, in February of 2022. And I thought it was a nice, gentle reminder that we'll get through this and stuff. I will admit that it took me a few watches of that when I made it first to sort of get dull my sensitivities a little bit.
Now, did the video have music under it to start with, or was that you jerk?
That's me. That's me in the works of Sagan Akinola.
Yeah. The two of you are responsible for more than a few tears in the at least in the section that I was sitting in the audience. There were many sniffles when your really cool actual intro video with the opening credits came up.
Come to Gallifrey One, experience catharsis.
It was a catharsis.
Yeah, it really was.
It was a whole weekend, really, wasn't it?
Yep.
I know that. We spent some time with Sean last night, and to see the he posted it elsewhere too. Just to see the emotional reaction that how really dire it was looking earlier on, and then how everything just really came together, and how this just became a weekend of healing and celebration, and just sort of this sort of feels like not the end of the beginning, but the beginning of the end in a way. That's what kind of where we are. This feels like the sort of the rebirth.
Mean of the pandemic, not the convention
Not the
itself.
convention itself,
It's like,
but
whoa.
yeah, it
Yes.
felt like we weren't doing this in the middle of a thing. It just felt
Yeah.
like we can do things like this if we're safe
Yeah.
and responsible about it.
And I know how much Sean cares for this convention, but like seeing him talk about it, like the number of people that had arrived and just how like the deep heartfelt relief and joy he had at seeing it come together, something he's worked so hard on over the last few months, was just like, I got misty, and I'm starting to get misty again just thinking about it, because it's just like, you know, for all of the people that have done so much work, I know they're low on volunteers this year, because of course they are.
Yeah.
Everybody has just worked their butts off to get this to come together, including the people who are hanging out and being at the convention as attendees. Everybody's done a lot of work, and it is cathartic and just wonderful to see it exist and happen.
Mm-hmm. No one wants to be the person to ruin it, essentially.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
No. And I've never been happier to be here.
Yeah.
I've been here since 2010.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most valuable one that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, like I listened to your 2MTL just before it went out, and it was like unscripted. Like it's a rare, like just raw chip on the microphone. And now I feel like listening to that, there was some slight trepidation and some sort of hope and everything. But I feel like that chip has probably changed over the course of this weekend.
Yeah, and I was looking for something to energize my love of Doctor Who, which, you know, my appreciation of the property hasn't changed, but you know, I'm on the record as being a Chibnall fan and Whittaker stan, but everything else around it was getting really, really hard for me to get past, and I think I'm there. I think I'm back.
Yay! What panels did ever? I'm conscious that, Erika, I don't want to like have you just say exactly what you're going to say for Verity. So feel free to spice your answers with something different. So I'll ask you first, Chip. Were there any panels or any stuff that you saw this weekend that you want to report back on?
I mean, the sight of Sacha Dhawan, Mandip Gill, and Joe Martin side by side on the stage. I don't know how many people really grasp what an important moment that was.
Yeah.
You know, the future of Doctor Who is here. And you can't put it all back in the box anymore.
No.
The joy that those three actors had, and the appreciation that the fans in Program A showed them, you know, it was absolutely moving, and it was important. I have issues with what some of the people who were coming up to the microphone with a comment more than a question were saying.
I feel like it's been like 2 years for them too.
Yeah.
I know, but one person literally, unironically, went through a spiel and then said, I guess that was more of a comment than a question, with no irony whatsoever,
Right.
and then walked away, and then several
Everybody
people
in our
around me
line
just kind of went
collapsed.
Yeah.
But the point I want to make there is that for all of that awkwardness, I do want to believe that people's hearts were in the right place, that you know, this is a moment, and people who haven't thought about what kind of a moment this is, they probably don't know how to express it well in the first place, and they haven't been peopling for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say, generally speaking, although the Saturday panels I experienced were better, I was disappointed a little bit in some of the sort of fan program, the fan paneling, and the fan Q&A. But again, I kind of chalk that up to the fact that we're learning how to do this all over again.
Yep. And I also think too, especially like just given the diversity on the stage, I think there's also Doctor Who fandom, especially like here, is largely white. And I think a lot of people want to be supportive and want to be good allies and are still working out how to do that. And there are definitely some stumbles along the way. And, you know, I appreciate that, like, it's like, yes, your heart is in the right place, asking questions about this, about your experience as a black woman, as a, you know, Southeast Indian man.
Yeah.
And, or of that heritage. And it's the awkwardness is, it's like, it's bless your heart for trying, but this is not quite the way to do it.
You're actually asking Joe Martin, Mandip Gill, and Sasha Dhawan to do some additional work on the stage.
Yeah. So that's like, I would just like to say to the Radio Free Skaro listeners who are in this position, and this is a position that I am and have been in for a while, make sure that the questions that you're asking are not putting emotional labor on the people that you're asking the questions of. For example, one of the panels that I went to that I had a great time at was the Whovian Creators of Color panel that Amanda Ray Prescott was the moderator for. She's a great moderator, by the way. And one of the things that she specifically wanted for that panel was not for it to be like, you know, a very special episode of paneling at Gallifrey One. She just wanted to get a bunch of creators of color up on the stage to talk about their work and the things that they love about Doctor Who and their passion for what they do. And it was just a great conversation about, like, hearing, you know, somebody made their own shoes because they wanted to look like River Song, and, you know, somebody else making a dress out of paper. Just like really fascinating creative things, you know, writing, podcasting, all that kind of stuff. And then it came time for the question and answer, and, you know, somebody asked a question where, like, I could tell their heart was in the right place, but it sort of took it back into that very special episode, you know, thing. Like, how does being you know, a person of your background interact with your, you know, which is like, that's the kind of question that I feel like that should come from the moderator if that's the kind of panel it is, and that wasn't the kind of panel it was. So like, I followed up with a question about, like, what are your best success stories? I want to hear how you totally rocked it. So I feel like maybe that's a good way to also be an ally, is to shift the conversation back into something that's a little less awkward when you have that opportunity. At least that was what I was trying for. I may have hosed it totally, and I hope one of those lovely people on the panel will tell me if I did.
Right. I was in the audience when you did that, and it worked.
Okay, good.
Another real highlight this weekend has been Kim and Sage from Head Over Feels just knocking it out of the park for This or That.
We're recording this before they interview Joe Martin.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. That. But we, because of the friend circles that we're in, you know, we had all of us here on the podcast, you know, we had the opportunity to sort of see behind the curtain and see who was scheduled and then rescheduled for This or That. And Sylvester McCoy and Fraser Hines, I was concerned. I was concerned. This is like pure chaos energy coming, and Kim and Sage were just masterful. They knew when to give and when to hold firm. And once Hines and McCoy got what This or That is all about, they were game, and they were deep, and they were funny, and it was perfect. Kim and Sage give so much to this convention.
Yes. I was a little like, I have seen Fraser and Sylvester on stage a bunch of times, and I have seen them tell kind of the same stories over and over again, because they have their Doctor Who anecdotes they go back to, and they tell them very well, and they're very entertaining, and it's great. And I was very excited and a little nervous to see them on This or That, because it's a very different thing. It's not about Doctor Who. It's about, you know, these people as people. It's kind of a personality test, as Kim and Sage say. So yeah, it was fun to sort of see the moment. That's always a thing with This or That, to like find the moment that it clicks for the guests as like, oh, this is what we're doing. Okay. And like to just watch them relax into it and like bounce off each other. And we heard stories about Sylvester McCoy and Fraser Hines that I'd never heard before. Like anecdotes about their other work, anecdotes about them as people. Like I would never have guessed that Everybody Loves Raymond is a comfort watch for Fraser Hines and Friends and Home Improvement, and that Sylvester McCoy is a binge watcher. Like he loves to binge watch, and Fraser is his go-to comfort show.
Interesting.
Like these and oh my gosh, I just have to tell this, even if I have to tell on Verity too. One of the questions was this or that. Would you like to be invisible or be able to fly? And Sylvester McCoy wanted to be able to fly. And I'm not going to tell the whole anecdote, but it was this long thing about how he did this bungee jumping for some celebrity thing that he was kind of forced into.
Right.
And it was like a slingshot bungee jump, it sounds like. And he was terrified at first, but in the moment where he sort of like snapped back and realized he wasn't going to die, he just went with it. And it was just the way he described it was poetic and beautiful about how he felt about that moment and flying. And it was just like, he is a raconteur, like that nobody can touch. But I've never heard him talk so poetically and like from the heart about stuff multiple times. It was seeing him not just as a performer but as a three-dimensional person, and it absolutely like just elevated my appreciation of him as a person. And if it wasn't for Kim and Sage and Head Over Feels, like I never would have seen that. And I feel like my Doctor Who fandom has just like taken a leap to another level. And I mean, that kind of happens every single year with this or that, because you really get to know the actors and give them a good time. But this was just like tops of my convention. That's my biggest highlight.
Hines apparently tracked down Kim and Sage in the dealer room the next day, which is today, and hugged them again, thanking them for the great time he had.
Yeah, and I had heard that he was gushing about it like over dinner that evening about just what a delightful time he had had. So it's nice to hear that the guests are having as much fun as it looks like they're having.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see that this is the 32nd Gallifrey One convention, and new things can still happen with veteran guests.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It makes a difference when you open the doors to new people, to host panels, to ask new questions, to play games like this or that. It makes a difference. This is how fandom regenerates.
Yep. Yeah. Like watching Riley Silverman do her interviews. I missed the beginning of her interview with Jonathan Watson, but I walked in and it was just like, it felt like two professional people up having just a comfortable conversation back and forth about, and I don't mean like Riley wasn't like telling stories about herself, because that would be super unprofessional, and that is super not her jam. But no, the questions she was asking were just like flowing in from, the way you do it, Stephen. You're a good interviewer too. Flowing in from the previous question, and just this, sort of sense of camaraderie on stage, which is a nice thing, because at some other conventions, and even sometimes at Galley in the past, the interviewers have been sort of more, I have a question, here's your question. Thank you for that answer. Here's the next question from my list. And that doesn't happen as much at Galley, but it's not, that's an interview, but it's not the kind that I want to see. This, I want to see the Riley style, kind of thing.
I like the conversational style.
Yeah. Riley's interview with Mandip.
I miss that.
My God.
I miss that.
Oh,
it was so good.
It was so good. It was so good. Riley drew out, not that it required much, but drew out sides of Mandip Gill's personality that we didn't see a lot of in the character of Yaz. So seeing that sparkle in Mandip's eyes, and just the back and forth about Mandip's creative process as an actor, particularly in the early episodes when, as she knew, the early bulk of the storytelling would focus on characters that were not her. Just appreciating Mandip more and more, and the Riley's talent as an interviewer just brought that out.
Yeah, my recency bias is why I mentioned the Jonathan Watson interview, because it was literally like just right before this. But yeah, it was totally the same vibe with Mandip, and Riley's ribbon for the convention is this beautiful like rainbowy one that says Thasmin is canon.
Yeah.
And I know earlier Riley had been sort of like, I don't know, do I tell Mandip this? Do I give her a ribbon? Maybe I'll wait until after the interview. But clearly they had a conversation backstage that made it clear that was going to work, because she then handed it to Mandip on stage and said, we've talked about this, so here's this, would you please do a dramatic reading of this ribbon for the audience? And she takes it in her inimitable Mandip Gill style, says, Thasmin is canon, and the crowd just went wild, and it was just a delightful moment, and it really just sort of cracked the ice to be able to sort of talk about that whole thing. And it's clear that because all of the episodes with her and with that storyline have not yet aired, there was a lot that she couldn't say yet, but she did a really nice job of talking about her feelings about it and the way that she approached it as an actor, and how it sort of wasn't a thing that was necessarily planned, but came about naturally just through the chemistry of the actors and the characters. And it was a great conversation, and Riley did a good job of pulling that out in a way that was very smooth.
Yeah. Speaking of that, it's funny because I get daily Google alerts for Doctor Who and stuff just to see what's going on in the universe. And apparently, a live tweet of our live show when I was talking to Matt Strevens, where he sort of said like they hadn't planned Thasmin at all. It's basically Jodie Whittaker coming in after the first season going, look what they're saying about Yaz and the Doctor on Twitter and stuff. And that's now hit like the Radio Times and like some of the news sites out there. So,
which is interesting, because that is not entirely the same thing that Mandip was saying. There's the Mandip and Jodie did some work on the characters, and Mandip talked about that. Matt Strevens focused on Jodie bringing stuff and sort of the buzz and saying it wasn't really planned. And I think the truth, it probably blends the two, but I appreciate that. I appreciate that actors act and put things in where they're given space to, and I think that Mandip and Whittaker deserve more credit than just for, hey, look at this tweet that I found.
Yeah. That's true.
And speaking of actors doing the work, I really, really liked the bit that Mandip said about how when she had scenes where she didn't have a lot to say and it was focusing more on other people, that she was consciously doing work in the background, like body language, the way that she looked at the other characters on the screen. Is Yaz like on really good terms with Ryan at this point? Like, where will I stand? How will I be looking at it? Like that kind of stuff. And that right there is like, I don't know if I'm super tuned to picking up on that or what, but like that is one of the reasons that I loved Yaz so much in her first season and didn't understand why other people were complaining about her not getting enough to do. I'm like, she's doing so much all the time. Aren't you seeing it? And, maybe people weren't because they were looking at the people who were talking on screen, but I was paying attention to Yaz, and I feel like, I don't know, vindication is not quite the right word, but I feel connected to Mandip Gill right now because I feel like I was picking up what she was putting down, and it was really working for me. And as much as it was nice to see her also get to be more active on screen in Flux, I never felt like the character, the fundamental character changed. There's character growth, obviously, but I saw everything that she was doing, and it worked for me. And the way that her character then later progressed matched up with what she was originally doing and what I was seeing, and that was a lovely moment for me to be like, yes, you were doing all the work all the time. Good for you.
Splendid. Well, I felt a slight chill and a breeze there. That was kind of cold. Yeah, we're shivering a little bit. Let's see. Just to quickly wrap up. Let's see. I had a good time doing the Adventure in Space and Time commentary.
That was so wonderful. All three of you on that couch just laughing. I had a perfect view of the back of your heads. I was right up front, and I could see how much Sacha Dhawan and Matt Strevens were just enjoying the conversation and like giggling at things that you said and the things that each other said. So well done.
It's a nice thing to make Sacha Dhawan smile at you when he's sitting right next to you.
I can't imagine.
Okay,
I would die.
Plant that in your mind palace there, everyone. I enjoy. And then I did the Cornell Collective late at night. That was fun.
It was hilarious.
Thank you. Well, it was hilarious.
It was.
It was fun. It was
all
a lot
of you
of fun.
were hilarious.
Did you repair your relationship with Paul Cornell?
There was some good-natured ribbing, folks.
TBD. What else happened? Oh, the commentary I did with Jonathan Watson for War of the Sontarans early on Saturday morning was a lot of fun as well.
9:45 a.m. Good for you.
9:45. We kept it going. We had a nice conversation. Goes, would you watch the actual episode? He's actually not in it a lot, just because he's a Sontaran. They don't do a lot of dialogue scenes and Sontaran stuff. But we still carried on in conversation and just had basically what it took to make Doctor Who, and so that was fun. I don't even remember what I did later on that day. I know I had another panel. What was it now?
Animation domination.
Animation domination. That's right. Where we talked about the future of the animation projects and everything. And then today I had a nice panel with Gary Russell, Tommy Knight, and Sadie Miller about Liz Sladen. And hey, if you want to start the tongues waggling again, their radio times. I'm trying to get to the bottom of the missing episodes rumor. That's all I'm going to say about that. So, do either of you have anything left before we throw the interview?
I just wanted to say I was not going to come to the animation domination thing because I was busy and because animation isn't a thing that I care that much about. But I ended up getting in there for the last half of it.
Right.
It was great. I was really just interested in hearing about the process and the good-natured chat going back and forth between the guest and with you, and then showing the exclusive scenes. Yep. I was just like, this is really fun. And Gary Russell with a microphone talking over a bits of the exclusive scenes and making wisecracks about how there's a lot of nothing happening in classic Doctor Who. And it was. I feel like I need to get over some of my biases about the things that I'm interested in and go to more panels about stuff that I wouldn't necessarily choose. And I just recommend other people do that too at future galleys, because wow, I was blown away. It was great.
I came in late and the first thing I saw was the BBC animation donation bucket
that Rob Ritchie prepared.
Yeah. Come on BBC, find the scratch.
Yeah.
Please.
I'm sure they will. Last words, Chip.
Great convention, great people, great panels, execrable fan questions
right.
on the Fridays and the Saturdays. But other than that, it's been a tip-top convention experience, and all the credit in the world to Sean Lyon and the volunteers.
Here.
Definitely. All right, we'll be back to wrap after this interview I did yesterday in the sunny California weather with Matthew Sweet.
So cold, so cold.
This is a first for Radio Free Skaro. I'm recording on the grassy knoll in the sun, in the California sunshine, with Doctor Who fan, TV critic, and journalist Matthew Sweet. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, this is a knoll, isn't it? I don't know whether I've been on a knoll before. I think you only have knolls in the States. I think we have something else in the UK.
Yeah, what are they called in the UK?
Hummocks? I don't know. Hillocks? Never mind the hillocks.
Never mind the hillocks. How are you enjoying your first Gallifrey One?
Very well, actually. Yeah, it's marvelous. It's just wonderful to be walking around in it and seeing all the cosplayers, admiring the craft, and I think I've sort of fixed the jet lag now.
Right.
I thought I'd forgotten how to sleep for 2 days, but it turned out. But I remembered at about 2:30 in the morning this morning, and woke up feeling quite normal, actually.
Oh, that's good. I heard tell. I missed this. I saw you in the lobby until very late, and then I went to bed. And then Jess Jerkovic, who was here playing Dudley Simpson, and apparently you attended a private concert of his.
I think of it more as a symposium, really. It was got quite academic. Yes, we got almost sort of line-by-line analysis of bits of City of Death and Ark in Space. And it was wonderful what he did with it. He's thought about it so deeply, and he understands that music and understands Dudley Simpson's greatness, I think, and it was a pleasure to hear it. He was performing it at the quiz, which I missed the quiz, but actually I think we had it better because we knew what we were listening to. We weren't just having to identify it. Right. He was giving us he was explaining it all in great detail.
I didn't. I heard that nobody on the quiz got the cues right, so I feel perhaps he missed his captive audience, so to speak.
Yeah, I think. Well, he definitely had an appreciative audience late last night.
Yeah. Well, as I told you before, we're waiting in North America patiently for the next 2 Blu-ray sets to come out. You, of course, have done some feature-length interviews on both. Who's on the season 17 one?
Season 17 is Bob Baker, the late Bob Baker, and it was. I'm so glad that he said yes to our request when he did, because obviously he's he left the scene, vanished from us really quite shortly afterwards, and he seemed very well and very content, and also delighted to be present at the historic first meeting of K9 and Gromit. So Matt Irvin brought K9 down for us, and we recorded the interview at Aardman Animations in Bristol, the home of Wallace and Gromit. Yeah. And of course, that's where Gromit, the real Gromit, is sits in the foyer there. Right. So these 2 great dogs that Bob brought into the world, really, if that doesn't present too gruesome an image, strange and gruesome an image to you. He got to see them together, and he was really amused by it. And I'm really glad he got to see that. It was really interesting and warm man, Bob Baker, and with a little bit of an edge to him as well. Not because he wrote a memoir, and it's always very useful to have a memoir if you're going to interview somebody. So it was great to be able to go into that conversation with quite a lot of details about his early life and about his filmmaking in the 60s in Bristol. Right. He did this, and I'd love to see this. I don't even know whether it exists, but he did this. The kind of it happened here idea. The sort of the story set in the parallel world where Germany won the war. Oh, yeah. So he did a film that was about the war in Vietnam happening in Bristol. So it was like a kind of My Lai massacre type scenario, right, but translated into Bristol in 1969 or whenever he was doing it.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Wow. So that vibe that I think is sort of there in those Doctor Who stories. He's looking for what else does his he takes the story of decolonization to a British story, a British imperial story, to the planet Solos. He's taking the story of the war in Vietnam and doing really much the same thing. Taking it out one context and into another to see what happens and what it means there.
Yeah. As a Canadian, we're sort of going through a bit of a lot of our relationship with our Indigenous population. And sort of coming to terms with reconciliation and everything. And in the past, I thought the mutants were just sort of like, this sort of dodgy thing on a space station and everything else. But now I'm sort of seeing like the colonial aspects of British in Canada as well. Like, it's weird how some of Bob Baker's stuff is actually sort of like actually had more importance to it as the years go on.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's because it is a way of understanding. There's two sorts of history going on there, isn't there? You get Bob and Dave Martin's commentary on the recent British past, but when we look at it, we're also seeing how the 70s viewed those things. So you're getting a kind of a double lens, aren't you? So it allows you to track those ideas across a longer period of time.
So that's on the season 17 set, or as we call it here, season 6 for some reason.
Yeah, I think that's... it's extremely confusing, that, isn't it? It's the only time those seasons have ever been numbered in that way. Why not just number them backwards? Or right. It seems quite arbitrary, doesn't it?
I know, because once everyone's wondering what happens for season 4 and 21. We're just gonna.
And what do you put on the Paul McGann box?
Does he get a box?
I hope he will. I hope he will. Yeah.
Whole box, or does it get crammed? No, because season 26 is come and gone. So what do you do with those?
Well, I think probably, and I'm not in charge, but I would say put the TV movie in a box with all the material from what I think we can call the interregnum, right. Can't we? Everything from Dimensions in Time to Scream of the Shalka.
There we are. That'll be a good one.
I'm not saying that that's going to happen, or whether in fact it could be, because a box like that would have so many more rights issues to negotiate through. So it could be a total nightmare, couldn't it? Because the material is so eclectic and so many different sources. And
it was enough for the TV movie itself to come out on DVD. That was delayed for years as well.
Yeah. So I think that maybe that'll be the last one. Maybe nobody quite had the energy to deal with the paperwork until the very end of the process.
But season 22 is coming out in the UK probably in March, judging by the BFI screening, right. I think, and then June here, and that has 3 feature interviews with Colin Baker, Nicola Bryant, and Michael Grade.
Why did you take a breath before you said that?
Because I am so intrigued to hear what he says, and so much time has sort of passed that now Michael Grade will willingly appear on a Doctor Who Blu-ray to talk about why he hated the show and axed it.
He does talk about that, right. And I think the lesson of that, without wishing to give away any of the detail, the lesson of that conversation is that he is quite happy to be associated with that. He's also happy to have publicly changed his mind on Doctor Who more broadly, but absolutely not changed his mind about his decision to well, however you want to, whatever word you want to use to what he did to it in the 80s. And I think we'll also discover that it perhaps means although it is a significant thing in his career, it might be perhaps more significant to us than it is to him. Even though he likes to be associated with that story, I think partly because it shows that he made a strong, tough decision, unpopular, tough decision that he absolutely thinks he was right about now. And in fact, if you think of the parallel world, would Doctor Who be as strong and as good as it is now without a period off the air? If it never had to return, would we be as happy with it as we are?
Probably not.
No, I think so.
We appreciated it more when we didn't have it, I think.
And I think what cancelling it did was show that it was something that could come back, and I think it having gone away and come back means that it will probably never ever totally go away. I mean, it could just be, it could ebb and flow for another century. It doesn't seem, it'll outlive us all, I think, in one form.
As Stephen Moffat said, I think, you will never see all the Doctor Who episodes. Rather grimly, he sort of said, some of you will die, and Doctor Who will carry on afterwards.
It's true, but even now, I think it's. My tutor at university used to say that the people knew the Renaissance was happening because it became impossible for one person to have read every book in print.
Right.
And it's very much impossible for one person now to have read every Doctor Who book, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, unless you'd never done anything else.
Uh-huh. Which, let's face it, some of us here have.
Yeah, you'd have to devote your entire reading life to Doctor Who to be able to know it all and capture it all. And again, I think there's a something. I don't think anybody should feel overwhelmed by that. It establishes it as a sort of territory. Like you can love a country, but you couldn't visit every single place in it, could you?
Which started as I get into my upper 40s now. It's like becoming like, I'm not going to go to some of these locations for vacations that I had always wanted to do, and part of me thinks I'm not going to see the Space Pirates episode 3 either. It's somewhat tragic.
And there's a lesson in that, isn't there? I mean, there was in a panel yesterday, there was a chap in the audience who had seen the Space Pirates episode 1, and the idea that there are some people with that in their heads is, I think I like that idea. I would like everything to come back, but I'm completely relaxed about the idea of missing pieces, because some of the greatest works of art in the world are incomplete.
That's true.
So,
for the interviews then on the sets, back to those. How much do you have to say, like, in people that you get for those, knowing that, you know, there's got to be probably a market for a lot of information to come out of some of these? Do you sort of like, are you involved in the early stages saying we should target this person for this set and this person for that set?
I think the thing is that there isn't, it's not like there's an immense list of people to choose from. I mean, as time, and as, you know, sadly as time moves on, the list gets shorter, doesn't it? So if you wanted to talk about, I mean, when Bob, I think Bob was Bob the only Pertwee, unless I've forgotten somebody. I think he's the I think he was the only writer from the Pertwee era left. I mean, there's still Henry Lincoln.
Yes.
And Henry Lincoln, I think, is the last is he the only writer from black and white Doctor Who?
I think so, yeah.
So as these people, you know, as time moves on, the choice of who to talk to it's not a question of, oh, shall we speak to this person? Right. Is we must speak to this person, this person, this person, this person, because they're the significant people, and they kind of they carry all this with them.
Is it I suppose also not a challenge as much as well, maybe it is a challenge actually, when you have people like Sylvester McCoy or Colin Baker or Tom Baker, people who have been asked everything under the sun, and you think you've heard everything from them, that it's your job to sort of let's get a proper without having an audience to sort of play to or anything, that you can really get some real proper juicy stuff out of it.
Well, I think that's the important thing, really. We're in a way we're always talking to Colin and Sylvester, but we're kind of always at a party with them. Whereas these are things that happen these are kind of one-to-one conversations. And although, you know, they do a fair amount of that too, it feels in a way strangely like talking, although it's much more, they're much more conventional interviews. Right. They are just ordinary interviews where you sit down with the subject and you ask them about their life. And I think there's I think that it's, in a way, it's one of the reasons that people seem to respond so well to them is because that experience of an interview is one that they've had less, oddly, even though they're talking all the time. Yeah. They don't get asked so frequently. Things like, well, what was going on in your life when you were doing this, and how did you feel about it? They're very simple things, right. Really.
How many people this weekend have asked you what the next one's going to be, and do you know?
Nobody, actually.
Really? No. What's the next one going to be?
Well, the next one is going to be 22, as we've said. I mean, I'm certainly not part of that decision-making process, and it's hard for me to keep track of, because we are, and it's no secret that I think we can all safely assume that unless something goes terribly wrong, we'll work our way through all of classic Doctor Who, and then hopefully give the same kind of treatment from the 2005 onwards series. Now, since, you know, as that moves further back in time, people are can talk about it in a more relaxed way, because not selling it, trying to sell it to you, and it's not part of a campaign of any sort. That certainly classic Doctor Who will all end up in these box sets. I don't think there are going to be, you're not going to have to kind of make one of your own to fill in the gaps if you're patient. And so we are recording material assuming on that assumption. So we have done interviews with people that you may not see for quite some time, right. But because a moment came when I think there was a sort of assurance that they were popular enough to see through to the end, and some money was released to allow us to get things into the bag, or the bank, however you prefer to put that. So yeah, that's what I can say. So
it's basically us helping fund your efforts, because we keep buying these things. Even though I've probably bought Spearhead from Space 5 times, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. certainly, if that first, if season 12 had been a bit of a damp squib,
Right.
you know, there wouldn't have been any more. I mean, it's not like these are commercial decisions.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I don't feel that we need to. I don't think we have to go on a drive or anything. We don't have to. Doesn't seem like we have to twist anybody's arm or use kind of guilt trip anybody, saying sorry if you don't buy 22. You may season 7 may get it. So I can't imagine what the bars would be for that to happen.
It's how wonderful of Doctor Who fandom, being assured pretty much that they're going to get everything, so they turn their worry into what order they're going to get it.
Yes, that's true. Or that's true. Or what the spine will, whether the spine of the box will.
Terrifying. The most worrying thing about the Russell T Davies return is are they going to get a new logo?
I know. And will they have to? Because this is obviously a long-term project.
Yeah.
I think we can fairly safely assume that there will be a new Doctor Who logo in 2 years' time.
Maybe.
It doesn't seem a wild assumption.
Yeah.
That does it. So yeah, will the Jodie logo become like the Diamond logo was to the VHSs?
Oh, the uncertainty.
You can choose to stay up late thinking about that if you wish.
Here's the thing: I don't choose to. Matthew Sweet, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everyone who I had the most delightful random conversation today, walking out of the writers' round table hosted by Lynn, where someone just immediately got up as we were walking down the aisle, and he said, "Stephen, I've wanted to know something for years." He said, "What is the production code for Stones of Blood?" And I said 5C, and it's okay. Thanks.
It was.
That was it.
It was amazing. I was there to see it, and like, yeah, and he's just like, thanks, and then he sat back down. I was like, hey, if you have a production code question that's been itching at your brain, and Steven Shapansky walks past, you ask a question, and
I've helped him. Maybe So thankfully, I helped. If you could help one person solve a years-long mystery, then you've done a lot in life.
There you go.
Who needs Google?
You know what at all. Erika, we'll hear your thoughts again on Verity, probably.
Yeah, listen on Wednesday.
There we are. Chip, you'll be doing a wrap-up in 2 Minute Time Lord?
Probably not. I've got other fish to fry.
Nice.
Oh.
Hashtag teaser?
I don't even know what that means.
I have been promising thoughts about Thasmin for some time.
Okay.
Yes.
And I need to do something before April.
There you go.
That's true. Well, I look forward to hearing that then. Thank you both for joining me on this here podcast today. Until next time, everyone, I am Stephen at Gallifrey One.
Erika at Gallifrey One.
And Chip at Gallifrey One.
So long for now.
You've been listening to Radio Free Skaro. Find us online at radiofreeskaro.com. Follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Radio Free Skaro. Subscribe to us on iTunes and donate to the show at patreon.com/Radio Free Skaro. Thank you.